Hey everyone, welcome back to Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yen, and I think I'm a little addicted to scrolling, and that's going to become relevant. But I think I've got this real compulsion that my finger just likes to twitch, just go up and down, you know?
And I'm Nat. What am I feeling today? I'm feeling a little sad, Yen.
About what?
My crab died.
Oh.
Yeah, me and my wife, we recently got this bowl of crabs.
Sorry. My wife. Carry on. I'm sorry.
We got this little like terrarium, vivarium bowl thing.
Yeah.
These vampire crabs in there.
Yeah.
They're really cute. And one died.
Oh, that's too bad.
And,
I'm sorry,
inexplicably.
That's
So
really
I'm a
sad.
little bummed right now. So I hope this episode, this comic that you've prepped for me is really going to perk me up.
Today we're reading a comic book about a lobster chef.
Are you serious right
No,
now?
no.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine?
You know, Nat, I just realized, I think we haven't, just in case people aren't aware of the format,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
If you're diving in here,
Welcome.
Welcome. Be our guest. Put
The
our do
comics
the test.
to the
do
test.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I'm the candelabra and Nat's
What, brah?
candelabra.
What is that?
Isn't that what he is? Isn't that what Lumiere is?
I didn't know that was a term.
And-
Sure.
And you're
And
the
I'm
clock.
Snow White. Hey, Snow White. I'm Belle.
Yeah, okay, you're Snow White. Yeah, you're Snow White. And so I'm the comic half of Comic Sans, and Nat is.
The Sans half. So Yen knows a lot about comics. I don't know much about comics. And basically, that's the dynamic here.
And that's interesting because today we're actually returning to a format that Nat knows a little something about.
Well, you mentioned scrolling.
I did
so
mention
putting
scrolling.
the context clues together.
Yeah, what does it make
Is
you
it
think of?
another web comic?
It is another web comic.
Very, very
comic.
exciting.
So we read a web comic in season 1. What was the web
Yes.
comic?
Oh gosh.
Really?
I know what it's
Oh,
about. It's about
We read Lore Olympus
Laura Olympus
by Rachel Stein.
Oh, you
and
put
that
me.
was a webtoon.
You put me on the spot. Okay. If you want to hear my reaction to Law Olympus, head back to season 1 episode. I can't remember. It's there somewhere.
I would recommend that too for a similar reason, which is that in that episode I go into a pretty extensive history of the webtoon.
Yes.
And we're not going to cover that so much today. We're going to leapfrog.
Leapfrog.
We're going to leapfrog off of that knowledge and go into a bit more of a niche genre.
Okay.
But we're still dwelling with the same idea, which is that this webtoon and the manhwa.
The what?
Oh,
That's
okay.
new.
Okay, I guess I didn't bring this up.
No, you didn't.
So we're not actually reading a webtoon today. We're
Okay.
reading a manhwa.
A manhwa. Is that a Mandarin?
Well, it's got its roots from Mandarin, but where it's actually with a W, not a U. So what does that make you think? It would be. I don't know why I'm putting you to the test. It's Korean.
Oh, okay.
And in that episode, we also talk a lot about how the webtoon's origins are Korean.
Yes, we did talk
right?
about
And-
that.
and
Yes.
the economic, social, and legal reasons for its rise.
Yes.
So, but we're not going to talk about any of that today.
No.
Well, I think we're going to, a little bit of the social stuff is going to come in, okay? So the manhwa is a vertical comic, okay? It's the cousin of manga,
Mm-hmm.
which is from Japan.
Yep.
Right? And so let's not, just to be clear, we're not going to conflate those two things. Those two things are not the same. We're reading a manhwa today, / a web comic. It's vertical. It's not a manga.
Yep.
But what we're reading actually today, and I think this may be the first time we're doing this. We're reading an adaptation.
Oh,
We're reading something that is an adaptation of something else,
okay.
which is a light novel.
Oh, what?
A light novel.
Oh, I think, is it like an online sort of novel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like anyone can sort of write.
Yeah. It's written in bite-sized chunks.
Yes,
It's a lot of
yes.
cliffhangers. It's, you could consider a lot of fan fiction, so stuff on Wattpad, AO3.
Right. Yes.
You could consider some of that light novels. The big thing is that they're serialized. And I think, sometimes people are a little derisive of the light novel. They see it as like, oh, it's reading for people who don't have a long attention span.
Right.
Right. Oh, you're just putting it into chunks for people's convenience on the bus or the train or something.
And my impression of it as someone completely outside
Yeah.
of that world is very often conflated with just fan fiction.
Yeah.
Which I assume is not what it is in its entirety. There's a lot more to it.
It's like subsets and
Yeah.
But I mean, here's the thing, and this is maybe slightly tangential, but actually, the serialized format did not originate with the light novel.
Right.
The serialized format, do you know what was told in a serialized form? Great Expectations.
Oh, yes.
Sherlock
right.
Holmes.
On like newspapers and stuff. They
The
would
Count
release.
of Monte Cristo.
Yeah,
right? We're
yeah,
talking about
yeah.
the classics of English literature.
Yeah.
Were written in the serialized form.
Yes,
And so,
that I know. Yes.
And so, I don't think there's anything wrong with the serialized form. I don't think there's anything wrong with writing something that wants to get people to keep reading as long as they're reading.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A little bit of a tangent.
Sure.
Just something to think about.
I can't stop you.
You can't stop me.
I didn't stop you.
And so the light novel and the webtoon were designed to get you hooked.
Yep.
Right? They're designed to get you want to keep scrolling, want to see what's going to happen next. Perhaps pay $1 to see the next chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're reading a specific one called Solo Leveling.
Solo leveling.
Have you heard of solo leveling before?
Never.
What a shocker.
Hey, the day that I have heard of something before, I think you quit.
I think, yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good out for me.
The podcast ends.
Today we're reading Batman.
Oh.
That's it, I'm out.
Solo leveling.
Solo Leveling.
Okay.
Solo Leveling is a light novel. Was
Originally a light novel.
By a writer named Chugong,
Okay.
presumably Korean.
Okay.
Pen name. We don't actually know who this is,
Right.
as far as I know. That was adapted into a webcomic in 2018 by the artist Dubu,
Dubu.
D-U-B-U,
Okay.
who tragically passed away
Oh, dear.
2 years after finishing it.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. So I believe it finished in sometime in 2020, 2021, because Dubu wasn't actually writing the story, but was adapting it. And that's part of what we want to talk about today, is about how important adaptation is and how that's not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then it was announced that Solo Leveling is going to become an anime.
Oh,
It's-
because of the manhwa.
Yes. So they're actually not adapting the light novel so much as they are adapting the manhwa and the
Oh.
visual style that was created by Dubu.
But then Dubu passed.
And then Dubu passed.
Oh. And the math then means like last year?
Very
This year?
recently. Very recently.
Wow,
So it's a bit
okay.
of quite a tragedy.
We're off to a really just
This is-
jovial start this episode.
I mean, you started with your crab
yeah,
diet,
I know, man. I didn't know.
What was your crab's name?
We didn't have time to name them yet.
That's really sad. I shouldn't have asked that.
Yeah, man.
I should stop laughing.
Pick it up a bit, man.
Okay. Now, if I tell you Solo Leveling is an isekai, I can already see your face. I can already see that you're upset with whatever I'm going to ask you next. What do you think that means?
Some form of Japanese cuisine is the first thing that comes to my mind. Like, hey, we want to grab dinner tonight. How about the isekai in your house?
You know what you're thinking of? You're thinking of an isekaya.
Hey, you're right. You're which in then I think it's not that bad.
I hate that I got there so easily.
And to be honest, I don't even know what an isekaya is.
Nope. I didn't think so. Okay, so an isekai means literally another world or different world.
Okay.
And so this,
Like compared to Earth.
well, no, it literally, that's just what the term means.
Okay.
And one way we can think about that, one example of an isekai, of a non-Japanese or Korean isekai, is something like Alice in Wonderland.
Right. Okay, got it.
Right?
So there's a fantasy element to it, maybe.
There's a fantasy element, but it's also a normal person gets taken somewhere weird.
Ah.
Right? So
okay.
Narnia,
Okay.
isekai.
Yeah.
Wizard of Oz,
Yep.
isekai.
Good one.
Right?
Let me name one.
Yeah, you go ahead. You go. You try.
There's that cartoon show where this kid like enters the world of dinosaurs. Never mind.
You mean Dragon Tales?
No.
Well, with Dragon Tales, though, that would actually be an isekai. Do you remember Dragon Tales?
No. Okay, you know what? Hey,
Harry
if
and
you know what I'm talking about, say that.
Harry and the Bucket Full of Dinosaurs?
That one.
No, that's not the one.
That's the isekai.
No, it's not. It's not. That's not even the right thing. He has a toy dinosaurs that come to life. He does
Yes!
not go to a dinosaur
He
world.
goes to their world. They
No, he
become
doesn't.
dinosaur size.
Let's move on. Okay, so the first isekai we know of
Yeah.
dates back to, and we're talking about in the Japanese tradition of the isekai,
Okay.
And I know-
manga.
in storytelling.
Oh, okay.
In storytelling, right? The tenets of it goes back to 8th century Japan.
We're really
Yes.
going all the way there.
We're going all the way back.
Okay, strap yourselves in, folks.
And that's a character named, it's from the Urashimako.
Okay. We want to apologize in advance for any butchering of pronunciations.
Yes, yeah,
of
yeah.
yen, mostly yen, because I'm not going to say much.
He's not even going to try. So
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
if anything, I'm more culturally sensitive because I believe in making this attempt to connect with other cultures. Whereas Nat firmly believes that we should stay in our silos, build the walls.
I don't believe in isekais.
Nat, say build. Come on, give him that chant you're always giving me. Come on.
Why should we build the wall? That's not even the words.
No.
Why do we build the walls? Dun, dun, dun.
I forgot how much singing we used to do on this podcast. And so in the Urashimako, a farmer, Urashima Taro.
Okay.
Farmer, wrong.
Wrong.
Let me run that again.
Hey, it's not a farmer.
You got me. You got me, Nat. A fisherman
Oh.
gets transported into a nautical kingdom and meets all these things. And he goes to the I believe it's called the Dragon Palace.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's the earliest isekai, as far as we can trace in the Japanese tradition.
Okay.
And I know I'm jumping around. We've gone between Japan and Korea. Right now, I'm just giving the origins of the genre of the isekai in Japan.
Got it.
And so in the 90s, the isekai is coming back again. And what it's coming back in is a specific form, which is for shoujo. Okay? I'm really, really throwing you into the deep end here with this, Nat.
Oh, so many words.
So the Japanese market
Yes.
of comic book readers is segmented into demographics.
Okay.
So there's shonen, young boys.
Ah, that one I've heard. Shonen, yes.
Shoujo, young girls.
Oh, okay.
And then there's seinen, which is older boys. And so it's for shoujo, so it's for young women. And a lot of it is about a schoolgirl, being transported to a fantastical kingdom with knights and dragons and these great rulers and magic and all this sort of stuff. And over there, they discover themselves, they find romance, they fall in love, and then near the end, they have to decide, oh, am I going to go home or am I going to stay here? Actually, today, I want to say this, is that we're actually dealing with a story that I'm not that familiar with.
Then why did you choose it?
Because I think it's just a really exciting thing. I'm more familiar with isekais as a whole, but I'm no expert in the history of it. So if I get anything wrong, be sure to just send Matt a message on Instagram.
Send Matt?
Send Matt.
Who's Matt?
Send Matthew Murdoch. Send Matthew Murdoch a subpoena. And he will take me to trial for everything I said wrong about isekais today. The reason I'm bringing this thing up about the 90s and how isekais used to be for young women is that shifted a lot in the 2000s.
Okay.
And actually what we're reading today is not of that kind either. It's not of that ilk.
Right.
It's not the kind that's for young women, because the isekai kind of in the 2000s became co-opted into a power fantasy for young men instead.
But still with females as the protagonist?
No.
Okay.
So the perspective switched.
Okay.
It was no longer about young schoolgirls suddenly discovering themselves. It was largely, don't sue me, don't call Matthew Murdoch, largely about young men, disaffected young men who are clumsy, awkward,
right,
unsociable.
Right. Like Evan Hansen.
Exactly like Evan Hansen.
Yeah.
Suddenly discovering that they're in a world where they are the chosen one.
Oh, interesting.
And that they have some capacity to change this fictional world and experience power that they've never felt before.
Interesting.
And it's kind of the same thing where they do discover themselves and they come into themselves, but the way they come into themselves is quite different, right? Where they're now confident because they hold power.
Right.
Rather than actually learning some innate truth about themselves.
Okay.
Not that those two things, I think there is some connective tissue between them. I don't want to completely dump on the isekai as a genre.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is this category of an isekai, is that something that's front and center in the sort of, because this shift, right?
Yeah.
Are those newer stories still calling themselves isekai in the marketing of it? Or is this something on a more analytical, scholarly level, the way that we say, oh, this story is a Bildungsroman, but they don't advertise it as a Bildungsroman. Am I saying that word right?
Yeah, Bildungsroman. Yeah.
Bildungsroman, whatever, yeah.
No, you're actually at an excellent point, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Hey.
I'm not that attuned with the discourse, and a lot of the isekais I've read have already been massively successful by the time they've gotten to me, and I'm working my way through them. But perhaps what's more notable is that they're taking the tropes from it, and they know those tropes are engaging already in themselves.
Right.
And applying the tropes to their story. So they don't actually have to say it's an isekai.
It's very overt.
And actually, here's the thing, is that there's also a lot of debate over what is an isekai.
Yeah.
But it's not clear how many people care about that. So, for example, one of the isekais I was just about to mention is Sword Art Online, where a young boy gets transported to this sort of video game-ish world. But the thing is that the creator of Sword Art Online does not believe it's an isekai.
But everyone else does.
I think it is.
Okay.
Based off of what I've seen of it and based off the tropes that it's applying and it's incorporating, right? So some other isekais are Mushoku Tensei and Dot Hack.
Okay.
Another one that I've read is Gantz. Gantz is firmly in the seinen genre, so that's for 17-year-old boys and upwards. That's when I read it. Hyper violent, hypersexual, extremely problematic.
Okay.
I don't think it's contentious at all. I think even people who love Gantz are there's some bits that are really oh. That has to do a little bit with the power fantasy of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, this comes back to what I was saying, which is that there's some debate about whether solo leveling is an isekai at all.
Right.
Okay, and so let me tell you what solo leveling's about. You don't even know
Sure.
still, right?
And the title gives nothing away. At this point, I think it's about a carpenter who works alone.
That's pretty good.
Really?
No,
Oh,
I mean that's a pretty good interpretation of the title. You're totally wrong. Solo leveling is about Sung Jin Woo.
okay, wait. And then at some point in all this, we shift to Korea.
Yeah.
Because we didn't talk about that shift.
Yeah. That's a great point. Well, it kind of goes back to our webtoon discussion,
Yeah.
right? Where they're reading each other's stories and they're building up on it. And I don't think we can point to a specific moment when the isekai became part of the Korean.
It's just like a cross-pollination of these countries that are next to each other.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
Okay.
Which do have distinct cultures and different styles,
Yes,
right? Because
yes.
that's why we're also talking about a vertical scroll and not a manga,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah,
But is the term isekai used in the Korean context? Because you said the debate over solo leveling, which is a Korean work.
yeah, that's a great point. I actually don't know.
Okay.
And why I don't think I can know is because I'm reading the discourse in English.
Right.
So I actually don't know.
There's a
if
layer of-
So
yeah.
there's a layer of detachment of how attuned I can be in this conversation.
Okay.
So if you do know, just tell us.
Hey, yeah, let us know.
Actually, this one I do want to know.
Spotify question and answers. We'll put a thing there.
Send the email to comicsans@andasproductions.com.
Look at
I'm
him.
never going to get that email right again because this time I genuinely want to know if I'm wrong. So our character, solo
Yes,
leveling.
Yes.
The solo of solo leveling
Yes.
is Sung Jin Woo.
Mm-hmm.
And in this comic, he's not actually being transported to a different world.
Okay.
Okay, the world he lives in is not like ours to begin with.
Ah, okay.
It's got a city, it's got buildings, it's got cars, it's got all that. But there's also monsters.
Nice.
And when I say monsters, I mean old school, like
Like Monster Hunter
like
monsters.
Monster Hunter monsters
Yes.
roaming around. Well, they're in these portals, and the monsters can come out into the world and they can destroy the world. But that's why people have to go into the portals to close them.
Sounds fun.
Okay, and Sung Jin Woo is a hunter.
Mhm.
And hunters are people who are like, they suddenly got this burst of power, so they're slightly above humans. And whatever you first awaken with, that's your rank forever.
Okay.
So they're ranked. So there's like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, no. A, B, C, D, E. And then on top of that, there's S. And then above S, there's nation.
Oh, so S is above A.
S is above A.
So you really said it
So
in the
why
wrong
did I do
order.
it in that order?
Yeah.
Remains to be seen.
And what's above S?
Nation.
Nation.
Not even a letter anymore. Again, translation issue. It may actually make a lot of
Right,
sense in Korean.
right,
It just
right,
doesn't make
right,
sense. It
right.
doesn't tally that well in
Yeah.
English. So Sung Jin Woo doesn't actually move worlds. He stays in his world.
Mhm.
But what happens is his understanding of it changes drastically.
Of his own world.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is not ours, right? But he suddenly sees his world in a different way. Because after a series of events that you're not going to read, but you're going to read around it,
Mm-hmm.
he awakens with new power.
Mm-hmm.
And that new power goes back to this thing I was saying about how they all have their power rankings.
Yep.
Because in solo leveling, everyone has a static level of power.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is after Jinwoo awakens from this crisis, he's suddenly the only person in the world who can get stronger.
Oh, so he's not static.
He's no longer static.
And that's his power.
And this is why I'm saying, this is why I argue it's an isekai. Okay? Because he's still in the same world, but suddenly there's an overlay on top of it.
Mm.
So he's living almost parallel. Maybe it's like a parallel world on top of his existing world. And that parallel structure, and this is the thing that I think is pretty exciting, what I found fascinating about solo leveling, is that it's an RPG. You know what an RPG is, Nat?
I do, but...
A rocket-propelled grenade. No.
A role-playing game. But
A
so
role-playing game.
He, explain, I don't understand.
Okay.
He's in a game?
So, solo leveling, and this is a feature of a lot of isekais and a lot of different stories, is that it incorporates the vocabulary of a video game.
Right. Like Scott Pilgrim-ish?
Kind of, but even more rigidly.
Okay.
Right? Where like Jinwoo can now see how many enemies he needs to beat to level up. And
Oh,
he can
okay.
see his statistics.
Like health bars
Yes.
and HP and
Yes.
PP and whatever.
Strength, charisma, intelligence.
Interesting.
All of that's now suddenly codified in a really neat way. Right? And so he's in his world, but he can see this RPG world on top of it. And I think this thing I'm saying about how neat it becomes is that that's actually an immensely satisfying thing as a reader.
Right.
Because suddenly it's almost like you're playing a game. Because you can see when he's going to level up.
Right. And
It's
you get
almost like you're
invested into
leveling.
that. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is what I'm saying about the, like, so.
Oh, leveling.
Yes.
Solo leveling.
And he's the solo person.
The only one who can level up.
Oh, my goodness.
Amazing.
And I think when you're reading, that's kind of the trick of solo leveling. That's the thing that I found so engaging about it, is that when you're reading it, you're getting really engaged with this journey that Jinwoo's on and how he's leveling up and he's growing and all of that, right? And that's what I see as the next level of transportation, which is we, as the reader, are transported into Jinwoo.
I see.
Right? And this is what I'm saying about how the characters, I would say largely the male characters of isekais, are pretty flat.
Right.
They don't have a lot of shapes. They don't have very
Because it's more about
traits.
the world that they're discovering rather
Yes.
than them as a character and their arc.
Yes. I mean, I think solo leveling, I've read most of it, but I've got like 10 chapters left out of 200,
Yeah.
which I binged in the last few weeks. Because I just couldn't stop scrolling.
Yeah.
Because you just want to keep knowing what's going to next. You
Yeah,
just
yeah,
want
yeah.
to know what's going to happen next. And I think this is what I'm going back to, where his achievements become ours. But unlike Jinwoo, who has to do all these things, all we have to do is scroll.
Yeah.
We scroll and suddenly we're in the story,
Yeah.
right? So usually we're talking a lot about the hows of stories, right? But I was talking about how do you tell this story.
Yeah.
But with solo leveling, I think something that's really peculiar about it and about isekais in general is that we're thinking about the what. Like, what's going on here? What is it? It's an isekai. How is it playing with that trope? What is it pulling us into at all?
Right.
Right? What is it to begin with that it's twisting?
Okay.
And so today we're going to read 3 chapters.
Sure.
We're going to read chapter 1, which is the introduction of the world.
Okay.
Okay? We're going to read chapter 11,
Okay.
which is Jinwoo waking up after this crisis that I've described to you. You don't need to know what happens in the crisis. You just need to know that he's waking with new power.
Okay.
And then we're going to get to chapter 17, which is when the power fantasy comes to life. Starts to manifest in a very real way. And the last thing I'm going to make you read is the first little bit, just a little bit, of the light novel.
Oh.
So we can talk about adaptation.
The source
a little bit.
material.
The source itself.
Okay, sure.
And actually, I think let's watch the trailer for the new...
What?
Yeah, because it's... Okay, so it's becoming an anime, right?
Right,
I mentioned that,
right.
And this is, again, where it becomes a sort of like, how do we, as global audiences, consume these stories?
Right.
Because it's a Korean light novel translated in English and many, many other languages, then made into a manhwa by Dubu, and then adapted by a Japanese studio.
Oh, wow.
Into an
Okay.
anime, right? And so there's this cross-pollination, and there's a lot of things shifting around here. And so today, I really want us to be talking about adaptation.
Got it.
Okay.
And if you want to, just again, if you want to follow along and listen and read and watch all these things, because it's all online content, we will link everything in the description of this podcast. So please feel free to go and do that.
Exactly. But the thing we're getting, actually, this is a little bit of a peculiarity.
Sure.
So there's physical prints. There's printed versions of solo leveling that you can purchase.
The manhwa.
The manhwa and the light novel.
Okay.
But that's not how most people consume it. Most people consume it online.
And it was how it's intended to be consumed, I assume.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say
Okay.
so. But there's also, I think, a little bit of iffiness about it because the norm globally, I would say, is piracy.
Right.
Yeah. So I was trying to find solo leveling to read it, right? And I was like, how can I pay for this? And every single thing online, like if you Google it online, right? Just Google it, read solo leveling, you will have to go to like the 3rd page to get to a legal link.
So there's no official like app or platform like Webtoon.
There are. And
Oh.
we'll link those.
Oh, okay.
But they're like so subsumed under these like hundreds of pages that are just
Reproduction.
duplicating it
Yeah.
and translating it slightly differently. And if you tried to go to Reddit and you'd be like, okay, how do I find it legally? Every single comment is like, why do you need to find it legally?
Right.
Why do you need to find it legally? What do you want to read it legally for?
Just
What do
to
you want to
clarify,
pay for?
the original was in Korean.
Yes.
And so this translation is not an official translation we're about to read. It's just someone's translation.
I believe we're reading a fan translation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's another interesting layer then.
And the light novel is definitely a fan translation.
Okay.
So there's a lot of weird
so
stuff.
many layers.
And we really don't like to do this on the podcast, right? We really try to do everything legally, try to read it in the exact way that the creators intended it. But solo leveling's made it pretty difficult to do that. we tried. We tried. And I think it goes back to that conversation we were having about how difficult it is to be an artist,
Yeah.
right?
Especially in a digital realm.
Yeah. And we're talking about, millions of people have read solo leveling, and millions of them have read it without any profit to the creator at all.
Yeah.
And when you look at these Reddit comment threads, read it with a total sense of entitlement as well.
Right. That I should be able to
I should be able to read it for free. Why? And you should be reading it for free. What's wrong with you trying to pay for it?
Well, I then guess that also brings an interesting layer into the adaptation sort of
Yes.
discussion, because then that is a sort of huge income stream then for the creators. We would hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So once again, at this point, if you like to Click on the links, read the manhwa along with me, watch the trailer, read the light novel, whatever else Yen is going to throw at me. You can pause the episode right here and rejoin us when we're back with the discussion where we'll recap everything and talk about what we just read.
We'll be right back, folks. Well, welcome back, Nat, from another world.
From another world.
From the world of solo leveling.
From my isekai.
Well, actually,
That's
three
not right.
different versions of solo leveling.
Yeah, what a multimedia experience that was compared to previous episodes.
Well, okay, so, for people who have not read it, I'm going to make you do a little recap.
Sure.
Okay, and so I'm going to start with the same question I asked you last time. Can you give me 5 words
Right.
to describe chapter 1, 11, and 17 of solo leveling?
Okay. So, first word is loser.
Okay,
So we started this loser.
yeah.
Then catastrophe.
Okay.
Something
okay.
happens.
Yeah.
Awakening.
Okay.
Bracket again.
Yeah.
You know.
I'll let you use phrases. I'll
Yeah,
let you
yeah,
use
yeah.
phrases. I'm feeling benevolent.
Awakening again.
Yeah.
Floating screen.
Okay.
Floating
Okay.
screen.
Okay. Weird choice. Okay.
And then who threw that knife?
Okay. That's pushing it, dude. That's pushing it. I give you an inch and you take a mile. It's very frustrating. It's very
I
frustrating.
thought that was a good summary.
I guess.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah,
Okay. So give us as brief as possible.
Right.
What did you read?
So we kind of start with, I guess, the beginning at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is we get introduced to this E rank hunter.
Yep.
Right? The lousiest of the lousiest hunters. We sort of are introduced
And
to
just
him.
to be clear, that's not your words.
Oh, no.
Right?
That's
the other characters are saying it about
they
this guy.
explicitly say this
Yeah.
guy, he's known as the weakest. What's
Yes.
some term
The
they
world's
use?
weakest
The world's
hunter.
weakest hunter, right? And that's how we're introduced to him through the sort of not so hushed conversations of
Yeah.
his peers who are talking shit about him, kind of behind his back, but he can totally hear them.
And do you think, I'm interrupting your recap.
Yeah.
But, I mean, do you see why that would resonate with a teenage boy?
I thought you were going to say you see why that would resonate with me because of the way you treat me.
No.
You don't see anything there?
No, I don't think there's any connective tissue.
You don't secretly say I'm the world's weakest comic book reader or
That'd be so funny if I'm going around and being like, that's an E-rank comic book reader.
But no, yes, I can
You
see
can
why
see
that
why
would
that's-
resonate.
yeah.
Sort of me against the world sort of situation. Everybody hates me.
Nobody understands me.
Yeah.
Nobody understands what
You
I'm
know,
going through.
Hey, Dad, look at me. Think
I
back
don't know
and
this
talk
song.
to me.
Don't know the song.
Okay, well,
That's it. You're done.
yeah. So that's how we get to know him.
Yeah.
He goes on this raid. Can't remember what happens in this raid. Oh no,
You don't
nothing,
actually
we don't
see-
actually see
you
the
don't
end of the
see.
raid. Goes on the raid that is supposedly.
Well, Nat doesn't see it.
yeah.
If you choose to read it, that's what happens in chapters 2 to 10.
Right, but the crux of that is we introduced to this weak guy, this
Yeah.
loser, right?
Yes.
My first word.
Yeah.
Then we jump to chapter 11,
Yep.
where post-catastrophe, I
Yep.
don't know what happened, some
Yep.
sort of big battle in
Yep.
which a lot of people got killed. They used the
Yes.
word massacre or something, but he survived.
Mhm.
And people are really like, why did this guy survive? And then some dudes from some sort of
The Hunter Bureau.
the Hunter Bureau come in and they're like, hey, put your hand on this magic detector.
Yes, that is, and sometimes Nat says silly things, but that's really it.
Anyway, so he puts his hand on it,
Yeah.
and it reads low. So somehow it's not detected. But then, actually, throughout the episode, we see this blue floating screen in front of. Sorry, I keep forgetting his name.
Sung Jinwoo.
Sung Jinwoo.
Well, SJW for short.
Nice.
Say it. Come on.
SJW.
Yep.
Yeah. So we see this floating screen in front of him, and we learned that no one else can see it. And then it's sort of this in-game monitor where he's receiving messages and seeing stats and.
It's like a
that's-
pause screen.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
For people who play video, a heads-up display, perhaps even.
Whoa.
HUD.
Whoa, HUD.
That's not for the Nats of the world.
That I don't know what that means. So we're introduced to this idea of the second awakening, which
Yep.
the Hunters Bureau suspected might have
Yes.
happened to him.
Yes.
But then they sort of be like, it wasn't the case because our magic detector didn't detect anything.
Yeah.
But then we learned actually it does happen. It had happened, just that.
On a technical note, it actually hasn't happened.
Oh, okay.
It does not have a second awakening.
Oh.
He's having something that nobody's ever understood
Oh, it's a
before.
brand new
It's a
phenomenon.
brand new thing, but that's how Chugong and Dubu use it to rationalize why people aren't instantly wait, what is going on with this guy?
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a brand new
It's
phenomenon.
a brand new phenomenon that they
Okay,
think
okay.
is second awakening, which they've seen before, but it's actually not that. It's
I
something
see. I
totally
see.
different.
I see. Okay. And then we go to chapter 17,
Yes.
where there's this sort of big monster fight of some sort. He gets some weapons.
Yeah, so for context, chapter 17 is at the tail end of his first solo raid.
Okay.
So from 12 to 16, he encounters more challenges from the in-game display.
Yeah.
And then he goes and does a raid by himself for the first time. And then you are coming up at the end of that when he's already leveled up and experienced some power benefits that he's never had before.
He's looted the monster or something for some weapons, and then he's on his way back, and then he encounters this giant boss monster that a bunch of low-rank hunters are hunting.
And this is in
the city, in the middle of the crowd gathering. There's the police present.
So this is dangerous.
Yeah.
So the issue is setting up the stakes that this is bad.
You want to take over this recap?
Yeah, I think I'll take over the recap.
Yeah.
And I just want to highlight what's going on, which is that it's constantly telling the reader and it's signposting to the reader, oh, actually, these hunters are not equipped to handle this monster.
Right.
It's an A-rank monster. It would take 10 A-rank hunters or something. Am I wrong? It does have that math laid out.
So I can't remember.
I may be confusing it with other moments, but a big part of solo leveling is like math.
Yeah. So
Like
I think
arithmetic.
they specified that all the hunters in this particular battle are like DE rank.
Yes.
So they're all struggling.
Yes.
The tank is struggling. The healer is struggling. The attackers are struggling. And so they're trying to fend off this monster. They're not doing any damage. And then all of a sudden, out of the crowd, like a little blade or a knife or a dagger comes out and hits the monster in the head. One hit KO. He's gone. And then the hunters were initially like, whoa, that must have been our cumulative efforts. And they're like, wait, who threw that? And then they turn.
And they turn around and he's gone.
And he's gone. And then the police is like, well, that hunter threw it. And everyone's like, what hunter? Well,
nobody there.
Nobody knows. Yeah, so that's pretty much it, right? And then that's kind of our introduction to how strong he's getting, right?
Yeah. And that's the start of the power fantasy. That's the start of, and I think...
Did you have power fantasies, Yen?
Well, I was going to ask you this. Well, I think this is, did you, not necessarily a power fantasy, but do you have a thing... You know, when you were a kid, you're like, man, it'd be so cool if I was doing this.
Oh, yeah. I used to daydream about having superpowers all the time.
Yeah, right? And
specifically concerning my romantic interests. Did you ever this daydream?
I really don't want... You want superpowers in relation to your romantic interests?
Yeah, like a frequent daydream of mine as a kid would be like my crush.
Yeah.
And this is, let me give context. I'm an innocent, like prepubescent, 9-10 years old. Okay, don't get your head out of the gutter.
Yeah.
It's just like some terrorists have put our school on lockdown. My crush is like strapped to a chair. And then like I'm like fighting people and then like save her and then like at the end we kiss, and then that's it. And that was
way better than I thought it'd be.
I don't know where you were going.
I don't need to elaborate.
Innocuous.
I'm not obliged.
But I would call that a power fantasy.
Yeah, that is a power fantasy. That is a power fantasy. And that's kind of what solo leveling is.
Yeah.
Right? Except it's not necessarily in our world, but it is a kind of, hey, what if tomorrow I woke up? And this is why solo leveling is so fascinating, is because it goes beyond just the power.
Right.
It's not just the power. It's what if I could measure my growth in specific, tangible ways and it would increase in increments.
And it's ways that in which the demographic audience would be very familiar with because they are playing those games. So it's a vocabulary, it's a mechanism that they are well versed in.
I mean, that's exactly why reading solo leveling feels like you're playing a video game.
Passively,
because you're aware of all these things that are happening, and you're like, oh, okay, I understand that.
Yeah.
And then it's like moments when he's like, oh, got an upgrade, and he's like, oh, I'll pick this, and you're like, yeah, I would have picked that too. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I think it does appeal to that, and I did feel if I was reading this when I was a teenager, I'd have been obsessed with it. I still think it's pretty good. I did enjoy reading it, but I think I would have been obsessed with it. I'd been like, oh, this is everything to me.
Then we read just the tiniest fraction of the
light novel, right?
Which was...
Can you describe what was in the light novel? What I really had Nat read maybe 60 words of the light novel.
Yeah, I mean, it's part 0, the prologue.
Yeah.
Right, so it starts at the moment in chapter 17. Nope, chapter 11.
Yeah.
Where he sort of sees the screen floating before him for the first time. And it's interesting because obviously this is just text. There's no visuals. And so the way it's described, I can just read a bit. So he goes...
He's trying to prove he can read again. We tried to stop this, but he just needs to flex.
This was definitely not a game. Of course, it wasn't a dream either. But her voice definitely resounded within my head. Hell, I could even see the quest window floating in midair too. And then later on, they kind of describe what's on the screen. Press up 100 times, incomplete, bracket, 0 out of 100, bracket. Right? Sit up 100 times, incomplete, 0 out of 100. Squat 100 times, incomplete, 0 out of 100. So it's sort of like laying out what's on the screen. It feels like I'm reading a screenplay. I don't know. It's weird. Like
it is weird because I mean
encountering this after the
and it literally puts the video game menu into text.
Yeah,
with none of the flash or baubles around it that are in the manhwa.
Right, and then
Where it's on the blue screen, there's different colors and stuff, so it really looks like a video game screen. But this one's just
and even
black
if
and white
you
text.
could imagine it like in a proper printed novel, they might have played with the formatting a
Yes.
little bit, put it in a different
Put it in a
font.
square.
Yeah,
or
put it in a
something.
square.
Yeah.
But this is really just like everything is flush left. This is
Yeah.
like I'm reading like a notepad
Yeah, it's
document.
not even like centered. It could be said, no?
Yeah, no. So it really just feels like a Microsoft Word document kind of copied,
Yeah.
pasted.
Yeah.
You know, it's very raw. I think that's the word I'd use.
That is a great word. That is a great
Yeah.
word. And that's also the word that people use to denote untranslated manga or manhwa files, the raw files.
Right.
Yeah, before they've been fan translated or
Right.
translated officially. The
Yeah.
raws, yeah. And that part of it,
Yeah.
the thing you just read about the press ups and
Yeah.
the sit ups and the running, that wasn't in what you had read, right?
No, that wasn't on the screen floating in front of it. It was like a message or something.
So I think what you've seen so far is like the statistics screen and the data.
Right.
screen. This is part of the draw of solo leveling, is that if he does this every day, he gains benefits.
Right.
And it's again going back to this thing of like, okay, I guess in theory we can exercise every day and we do physically improve, but for it to be laid out so tangibly. I mean, if I told you, Nat, if you did 100 push-ups today at any pace you want, right? Ran 10K and did 100 sit-ups, the end of the day you would be presented with 3 rewards. And one of them would be a stat boost in all your stats, right? And complete recovery, and then an item of your choice. I mean, oh my gosh, I think that's...
Are you implying that I would do it?
Yeah.
I think you're sorely mistaken.
Oh my god. And you would
Run
be...
10 kilometers,
You would
my
be
guy.
wrong to not do it.
Run 10. I'd rather just not
You could just
level
do
up.
10 1km runs
In a day?
in a day.
That's a lot.
Okay, well, let's not. You're getting further and further away from what I'm trying to say, which is that I don't think power fantasy is enough to describe what solo leveling is doing.
Right.
I was saying earlier that there is some social things going on here.
Between the writer and the audience demographic? Is
No, sorry, I mean societal.
that- Right.
Societal things going on where we're talking about youth who are disaffected.
Mhm.
Perhaps in a schooling system that they don't feel that recognized in. They're not recognized by their peers.
Yeah.
And they're presented with this story that is telling them, hey, actually, in this world, it's not just the fantasy of magic powers. The ultimate fantasy is that you can do specific things in your day and you will become better and you will be on track to something, right? That there's a life path
That is attainable?
that is attainable,
Yeah.
that is measurable, that
Yeah.
is achievable in front of you.
Right. So it's no more a fantasy. It's actually like viable, with quotation marks, viable sort of reality. Doesn't feel that out of reach.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it is out of reach. I mean, you think of yourself in high school, right? You think of yourself in middle
Yeah.
school or
Cursed
secondary
days.
school, right? And I remember just being so completely overwhelmed all the time by the options in front of me and the fact that my life at any moment could go wrong based on a choice I was making in that moment.
Right.
And I'm talking about the Singapore schooling system, which has connections to the Korean education system and the Japanese,
Yep.
which is very high pressure environments.
Yeah.
With very clear
High
metrics,
stakes.
high stakes,
Yeah.
and clear metrics for your success.
Yeah.
Right. And this thing is saying, hey, actually, that thing you know, that way you can measure the world, what if that was real?
I see.
You see
okay,
what I'm saying?
okay.
Right. And that's why it spoke to middle schoolers and high schoolers across the world.
across Korea and the world. Yeah.
because they're feeling this sense of like, oh, I don't actually know what's going to happen next. But what I'm escaping into is this world where that's very clear.
Right.
Yeah.
It's black and white.
Yeah,
You do this, you get this.
exactly.
You know, yeah.
And I think that's working at a subconscious level. Nobody's going to this and they're like, oh, I failed my test today and I don't know what my future is. Let me go.
escape into my isekai.
Yeah, let me escape. No, nobody's thinking that. But I think that's the draw
Right.
that you're not recognizing is happening.
And literally, I mean, moving into the third medium that we consume as part of this quote unquote
Yes.
reading, it's crazy to see this in the quote unquote raw format.
Yeah.
And then to watch the trailer.
Yeah.
I mean, and
transformation,
obviously the
right.
manhwa is that connecting piece.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the.
I mean, it
it's-
wouldn't happen without it.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
say.
But
It
to
just wouldn't
see
happen without it.
source and what that was.
the
that's
anime
in-
trailer.
Yeah, the trailer.
Which is
that's
it was,
insane.
I didn't even realize this because I hadn't seen the trailer. Nat and I watched the trailer together. That it actually has events directly from chapter 11.
Yeah.
Like I was like, oh, I kind of nailed it with my choices. I didn't even
Yeah.
realize it would land on it so specifically.
Yeah.
And just seeing those characters in motion and those character designs, which is the same as the manhwa.
It's exactly the same, which is an
Yeah.
interesting conversation about adaptations, which I know we're going to get into. But I mean, this whole world of, and I'm going to use manga as a shorthand here because I know this is manhwa.
Yeah, you gotta use manhwa.
Okay, sure. But correct me if I'm wrong, this is our first sort of dealing with this sort of art style narrative storytelling that I recognize as being manga adjacent.
Sure, cousin to manga.
Yeah, you know, this sort of anime style of art, the big
uh-huh.
eyes, the very expressive, a lot of action lines, sort of that sort of thing. I mean, I wouldn't know how to necessarily describe the core characteristics of it, but you know it when you see it, right? This is our first time dealing with this particular genre. I would say it's a genre unto itself.
I would actually say it's almost a media. It's a medium.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's beyond just being like, oh, it's action.
Yeah.
You know?
And so what I would say is baked into this media is that symbiotic relationship between the anime and the manga / manhwa, right? Which I understand to be very sort of interconnected.
Yeah.
You know, which is why you see, as we saw in the trailer and in the manhwa, the art styles are essentially identical.
Yes.
There's no creative interpretation in terms of let's make this character look this way or let's change the look about this character. It's really like the comic come to life.
Yeah, and I think
which I don't think you see necessarily in other mediums, comic related mediums.
Well, I think what we're going to find out when the anime comes out, if it's already come out, I'm not clear on the exact release date of this episode or the anime itself. So they both could be coming out at the same time. But I think the creative decision making comes in with what happens between the panels, because an anime is continuous motion and a manhwa isn't. You're totally right. The character designs are identical, and it's actually really exciting to me because there was a lot of fan favorite characters from the manhwa that were animated in the trailer. The characters that you haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was just very exciting. And we're going to see what artistic choices they're making, because there's the continuous motion, but there's also, we talk about this like almost every episode. These things have beginning and endings. Right. The manhwa chapter does not translate into 24 minutes of an anime episode.
Right.
So where they're going to stop and where they're going to create that hook for the next episode is going to drastically differ. Because within the manhwa format, those hooks are happening every chapter, over 200 chapters. So we're going to see what that's like.
But correct me if I'm wrong. But generally in the manga / manhwa world, anime world, not only the art style is sort of very faithful, but also the whole like narrative storyline, right, is pretty faithful.
I would say the narrative in most cases that I know
like
of
beat to beat
are identical. The only situation in which I think they're different is that the pace is sometimes different,
right?
So that the manga can move forward enough.
Yes.
And the other thing is what they call filler, which is stories that exist within only the anime so that the manga can progress forward.
Right. Yeah, but
And
I mean that's what I mean about that sort of symbiotic relationship that you just, I mean, we don't see that at all in like the Marvel DC world, right? Like adaptations of Marvel DC source material can go completely like anywhere. Yeah, right.
The decisions made in that adaptation are totally different.
Very different understanding of adaptation as a practice, which, you know, we were going to talk about it. What is that practice? What is that craft of adaptation, right?
And just, you know, so you know, dear listener, we will be reading manga. And Nat doesn't know this either. Reveal to Nat.
Surprise.
We have some slated. We haven't made some confirmed decisions, but we have an idea of what we're going to be reading.
Okay.
And I'm really excited to get to those.
I guess I am sort of. I don't know. I've never read manga before.
Well, we'll see.
But I actually kind of want to watch that now, which says a lot for me.
That's pretty huge.
That's huge.
I mean, have you watched any anime?
Nope. Wow. Oh, actually, I mean, when I was young, I kind of used to watch a couple shows like on and off on Animax when I had cable TV, but I never faithfully followed. I used to watch Ranma Half.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. There was this other show called Gensamudon Sayuki.
Wow, I don't know this.
It was really random, but for some reason my brother and I really enjoyed it. It involved like Demon Slayer situations. This like ragtag gang of like Demon Slayers just like going around slaying demons. Kind of not dissimilar to this sort of Monster Hunter kind of vibe.
Right.
That was that. Every time Slam Dunk would come on, I'd turn it off.
Whoa!
I just wasn't interested in basketball.
Okay.
I wasn't interested in basketball, dude.
Wow.
Where's the football anime?
There is a football anime.
Is there? Well, not when I was a kid. I don't know. It wasn't showing on Animax.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But there is oh man, now this is gonna people are gonna be screaming.
It's not Super Strikers, right? That's not it.
What's it? Oh, sorry. I gotta look this up.
I mean, but you know, I don't even like football related shows because I like the sport itself, but I often don't like fictional depictions of it because I always feel it doesn't work. Okay, here's a hot take. I'm not a fan of Ted Lasso.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Do you not know this?
No.
Yeah.
Now, hold on. If it was an anime.
Yeah, I know everyone loves it and I just couldn't get past the fact that like every time I watched it, I'm like, that's not how the football world works.
Oh, you're so boring, dude. I say this all the time. I think the demand for realism is the death of entertainment.
It's not about whether it's realistic or not. It's just like this sometimes you cross the line too far. Like the owner being in the press room and then answering like that doesn't happen.
Okay. Anyway, I couldn't.
If you are with me,
I literally could not care. This is the most bored I've ever been while we're recording this podcast. Talking about Ted Lasso and the inaccuracies of its depiction of soccer.
Football.
I couldn't. Anyway. This is what happens when I try to look something up. You go off the rails. The anime/manga is Blue Lock. That's the most famous. Blue Lock.
Blue Lock.
That's probably the most famous soccer.
Okay, I won't check it out. But what I'm saying is I won't check that out, but I actually may check this out.
Okay, you're getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
You're getting ahead of me. Let's talk about vertical scroll a little bit.
Sure. I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it a lot in
Lore Olympus.
Lore Olympus and the webtoon.
But Lore Olympus wasn't an action-centric story either.
Right.
There is action in what you read.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think...
Primarily 17. 1 and 11 are a little more
Let me pull it up. Yeah. What was interesting to me is, and I don't know if this is like an issue of how it's transplanted into this website or whatever, there seems to be a lot of white space. Yeah, like, like between the panels.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to give breathing room.
Yes.
Which I feel like with Lore Olympus, there were a lot of like panels bleeding into each other.
Yeah, and I think Lore Olympus has continuous color also. Right?
Yeah.
I don't think there was any.
This one feels that there is a lot more structured paneling and they are quite generously spaced out.
Yeah. And we're talking all rectangular panels.
Yes,
so
mostly rectangular panels. But there's also words in the white space.
Yeah, sometimes.
Like, that's the boss.
Yeah. Realizations that the character's experiencing, trying to give them more weight by putting in the white space.
Yeah.
Fairly conventional for the manhwa / webtoon. There was one moment actually that I want us to go to.
Sure.
That I was watching you read it over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And I was curious by your response to it. It's when he throws the knife at the monster.
Oh, okay. So end of 17.
Yeah, near the end of 17, right? So he's now realizing that he needs to help these D rank and E rank hunters, and he's ready to chuck his knife.
And this one, he says, "Go."
Yes, right. And so we got a bit of a, Nat, describe to us what you're looking at.
Sure. Where do we want to start from? Okay, so he kind of like gets his dagger ready, his knife ready, and then we get a behind the head shot. Get a close up of his feet, kind of like screeching on the ground. He says the boss is around D rank compared to the boss I fought just then. It's 1 rank lower. And so then he's kind of standing back from the crowd, shaping up the monster. And then he gets ready to throw it. Close up of his hand, a lot of action lines, a lot of motion blur.
A lot of blur, yeah.
Yeah, and then go. And this face is so good. Just a close up of his face. Kind of just like...
There's a bit of like what in animation, I can't remember what it's called, but like when they stretch.
Oh, the in-between frames.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't know what the technical term is. I forget.
Oh, man. Once again, people are going to be screaming at us.
Hey. I think they're in-betweens. Is it called in-betweens? I took an animation class once,
Well, a lot of good it's doing us now. Squash and stretch.
That's not it, lad.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. You're talking about
sure, yeah.
It creates more dynamism. And it's not exactly what's happening here, but there's a sense that...
Right.
His neck is longer than it should be.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to create the sense of motion.
Dynamism. Yeah. And then I to be honest, I don't know what's going on in this panel. It's just like a bunch of like action lines and then I guess he throws it or something?
Well, okay.
Oh, it's sideways.
Yes. And this was funny because I was watching Nat do it and I think I saw him turn it sideways and I saw him still not understand what he was looking at.
I only turned it sideways at this part.
Okay.
And I went like that and like, oh, okay, I guess. But I didn't realize that it was connected to this.
Well, it's a long panel that goes beyond the singular screen.
Right.
You have to scroll and
unless
the panel continues.
You're using a screen like...
Unless you're using Nat's vertical monitor.
Yeah. But yeah, that's pretty cool, I guess. So like then you turn your tablet or whatever sideways, your phone, and you see him kind of just like post throw, you scroll right, you see the knife flying through the air, and then over the crowd of people heading straight to the cranium.
But it's faux animation.
Yeah.
You are creating the animation by scrolling.
Oh, I see. I guess so.
Right?
It's kind of like, did you ever read Captain Underpants?
I wasn't allowed to read Captain Underpants.
Really?
Actually, Nat, I got a great next episode. Next episode.
Are they comics?
Yeah, they are, aren't they?
You have, I think they're illustrated books lah. I mean, but yeah, I know in Captain Underpants you got the fliporamas.
Actually, Captain Underpants is an isekai. No.
Hey, I think you could argue.
I don't know. Isn't it?
Super Diaper Baby. Have you heard Super Diaper Baby?
I don't want to talk about this. I absolutely don't want to talk about this.
I'm a huge fan.
We are not
of
doing
the
this. We are
series.
not doing this. We're not doing this.
Next episode, Captain Underpants Sans, but not Sans Underpants because that would be
No, that's just wrong.
that's just Captain Naked.
yeah.
Okay, but
gross.
yeah, okay, so yeah, it's like you're doing the animation yourself. I get it, right?
Right. That's why the panel stretches beyond the screen itself because the reader has to get involved to make it happen.
Right, and that wouldn't work with a vertical scroll because then he'll be throwing it downwards, or he'll be, it wouldn't.
It does work. That's how I read it, and I just had enough of a brain to flip it in my head, which apparently some of us are lacking.
Okay.
Well, not even because some of us turned it and still didn't understand. So, but I'm saying this goes back to this point about immersion, about transportation.
Yeah.
We become Jinwoo throwing the knife in that moment.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. That was cool. That was a fun one. A lot of action in these first two episodes. We had a lot of chase and fighting in Daredevil, and now we get this monster slaughtering in episode 2.
We may be slowing it down in the other episodes. We'll see how it goes.
Give me a little
vary it up.
Give me a little tranquility.
Boo, Yen sucks.
Yeah, one-dimensional man.
Oh man, this really stings.
Yeah, he's the world's weakest comic book recommender.
Okay, well, let's get to that. Okay, Nat, first question for you. Would you keep reading?
I don't know if I'd keep reading per se, but you have really turned me on to the anime. I'm interested to see. I mean...
Okay, yeah, I'll take that.
But I think, I admit part of it is because I read it and then seeing it there. I think there is a sort of like appeal to that. Bringing to life a static medium, So I feel like if I didn't keep reading, I don't know if I would keep watching. You know what I'm trying to say?
I hear what you're saying. We always go back to this. But I think that I'm curious to see whether the anime can achieve the same level of immersion.
Right.
Because
interesting.
The reader,
it's not scrolling.
You threw the knife.
I did.
Right?
I mean,
But there's no way for a viewer to do the same thing.
Right. Is there sort of like a sort of schools of thought in the world? Like you got to read the manga first before you watch the anime?
It varies so widely.
Some people are like, don't watch.
It varies so widely. But I would say by and large, most of the time, the purest thing is to read the manga.
Or the manhwa first.
Yeah. But, I'm not in conversation with people who read light novels because they could say you should read the light novel first.
Right.
But I will say that there is a distinction between the light novel and like narrative-wise. Those don't necessarily map identically.
There's a much bigger gap between the light novel and the manhwa anyway, I would say.
Yeah. I don't know what the purist... I mean, I think somebody will probably hate you for saying that you'll watch the anime and not read the manga. And that person could be me, but it could be unrelated to that choice.
Yeah. So I guess I'm sorry, I guess.
You can't apologize to me. It won't make a difference.
But yeah, so that's my answer. I probably won't continue reading just because, I'm a busy man.
But that's why the manhwa's perfect, dude. But
I said I would keep reading the webtoons and I didn't really. So I don't want to promise people anything,
All right.
Man's busy.
Okay. Next question.
Sure.
If you liked blank,
yeah,
you would like Solo Leveling.
And I fill in the blank.
You fill in the blank.
And we're both going to fill in the blank.
We're
still figuring this out, guys.
I'm really struggling with that sentence construction. If you have ideas for how we should update that sentence.
But this is basically the Comic Sans recommendation pipeline, right? So we're going to start with, if you like X, you're going to like Solo Leveling. Yes. So I'm going to say... And this is coming out of a weird place for me because it's not something that I've personally engaged with much. But my older brother used to play a lot of Monster Hunter, and I think I said it just now in the episode. Like Monster Hunter,
I really was very shocked that Nat knew Monster Hunter.
Not because I played a single minute of it, not even a second, I would say. But my older brother and cousins used to play it quite a bit on whatever console it's played on, PlayStation.
They were probably playing on the PlayStation, but it's been on a lot of different consoles.
Yeah, and it reminded me of that sort of like free roaming world, and then you'd see these monsters and then you'd attack it. So if you like Monster Hunter, I would say you'd probably like Solo Leveling. I don't think that's a stretch at all.
I don't think that's a stretch, and to go cross media as well, I would say if you like MMORPGs.
Right.
If you like massive multiplayer online role-playing games, there's a lot of vocabulary in Solo Leveling that's going to be familiar to you. They go on raids, there's tanks, there's healers, but it's also transposed into a society that's semi-realistic.
Right.
Which creates some interesting dynamics, and
Yeah.
there's some interesting characters, and some things emerge from that. I think the stuff I really like from Solo Leveling, which you got a little bit of a hint of, is the Hunter's Bureau, which you got a very brief snippet of.
Yeah, in the hospital.
Which is essentially a team of administrators that are hunters, but their job is to manage the 5 guilds of Korea. And make sure that those hunters don't step on each other's toes and don't get into conflict, because if they get into conflict, they could destroy the country.
I see.
So that's a cool thing about it that I like. And now
Shifting to the other end of the pipeline.
yes, and now the blank changes. If you like Solo Leveling, you might like blank.
Right. And last time you just did this, but if I got something, I'll say. But you go
Do you
first.
something?
I don't know. Let me think.
Okay.
We
I've got a clear one.
Okay, you go first.
Because I would say it's the first isekai that I read, which is also kind of debatable if it's an isekai. It's the same thing as Solo Leveling, where it's more about an awakening in the existing world. It's Omniscient Reader. Okay, an Omniscient Reader is, how can I explain this best? It's like Solo Leveling,
Okay.
but instead of an RPG vocabulary,
Yep.
instead of his benefit being he can level up,
Yeah.
his benefit is actually that he's read the book
That his story is based on.
that describes the events the world is going through.
Right. So he knows the future.
So he knows the future, and it's a catastrophic event, and it's big sci-fi.
Okay.
And he
okay.
knows every single thing that's going to happen.
Okay. Our protagonist knows.
Our protagonist knows, and at the same time, he knows that he's not the main character of this story.
Oh,
And
okay.
there is an existing protagonist, the hero, that our protagonist is trying to help save the world without getting in his way.
Who wrote this book?
It's on Webtoons.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
So Webtoons exists in...
Who wrote the light
no,
novel?
who wrote the...
it's a big mystery.
Oh, okay,
I haven't
okay.
finished Omniscient Reader, so I
He just
haven't.
finds it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just something that he loved reading on his way to work. And like Sung Jin-woo, he's like disaffected, doesn't really get along with people.
Right.
And then suddenly he's confronted with this immense source of power, which is knowledge that comes from a book. So I think it's a pretty interesting, because it's also based off of a light novel.
But that light novel is not the same as the light novel he's reading in the story.
No.
So there's a light novel that's a source material.
Yes.
And in the light novel source material, it's
Yes.
also about a light novel.
Yes.
See, this is
Light novels all the way down, baby. Okay, Nat, do you have a rec?
I have a rec, and this is going to be a full circle sort of rec.
Okay.
I mean, again, exposing my limited knowledge of...
If he says Ted Lasso.
No, I'm going to say if you read and enjoy Solo Leveling, you might kind of like Scott Pilgrim-ish. With the sort of with the video game vocabulary.
Yeah,
And if you're curious about Scott Pilgrim, we have an episode on that. Go listen to it in season 1. Not the anime. Is it the anime? Would you call it the anime? The animated series just came out.
They're calling it an anime because it's made by an anime studio.
Oh, okay, sure.
Yeah.
So the anime just came out. There's the movie. There's the comic.
I would say Scott Pilgrim, it plays it a lot faster and looser with the video game rules of it.
Right.
But it's still an interesting
Not as
combination
sort
of
of just
vocabularies.
rigid sort of world logic.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my recommendation.
And, if you want to know anything about any of the other shows that we've brought up, check out our show description notes. They're done excellently by producers, Scott and Roshan.
We take no credit for what's in the description box.
We create misery for them, because every time I bring up something, they have to deal with it. Like, let me bring up something. Let me think of something I can bring up that's going to be a real headache.
Madagascar 2.
Curious George. Oh, we kind of ended up in a similar spot. But yeah, now they've got to include that in the show notes. So check out those show notes, reward their hard work.
Well,
thanks everyone for listening to Comic Sans. We'll see you on the next page.
see ya. Thanks for listening to Comic Sans. This is an Andas Productions podcast hosted by Myle and Nathaniel Ma and produced by Roshan Singh Sambhi and Scott Lee Chua. Our cover art is by Isabel Fang. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow and rate Comic Sans. And while you're at it, follow us on social media at Comic Sans Pod. Links are in the description below.